If you've been feeling unhappy with your hobby time, today we're going to talk about why that is and how we can fix it. Let's get it. Welcome back to another episode of the PlamoTherapist podcast. Today I want to talk about why you're feeling unhappy when it comes to building. While Gunpla is a hobby that's meant to be fun or enjoyable, there are times when we think we should be feeling happy, but we actually don't. There are even times when we're building that we start to feel some very strong emotions such as guilt or shame. And while I've talked about how if these things are left unaddressed, we can develop an unhealthy relationship with this hobby and eventually we can lead to burnout. So today I want to talk about why we become unhappy with our hobby time, how we fall into this pattern, and then what we can do to get out of it. But before we can understand how our hobby time makes us happy, let's take some time to understand what makes it enjoyable in the first place. And when it comes to our hobby time, what makes it enjoyable is that we are engaging in high quality hobby time. High quality hobby time is time dedicated specifically for the enjoyment of our hobby. It is a conscientious choice that we make to partake in this hobby. And as the builder is choosing to engage in this hobby, we're able to set definitive start and end times. By planning ahead, what we're also doing is we're allowing ourselves to protect our hobby time from a lot of the things that happen throughout our day. And that also helps us to ground our schedule, meaning we can make sure that we can get things done before we need to get started, or we can get it to a state where we feel okay stopping in order to engage in the thing that we want to do before either resuming it or leaving it at least for the rest of the day if it's work and then coming back the next day. All of these factors help us to achieve that flow state when it comes to our hobby. And even if you are having some, process or thoughts or feelings that are coming up throughout the day, we can process that using our effortful processing model, which I've mentioned before. When we engage in our high quality hobby time, we are able to get the maximum benefits out of it. And we feel good when we get to do the thing that we actually want to do. But if this is so great, the question then arises, how do we possibly become unhappy with our hobby time? Really, the question then becomes, how does high quality hobby time stop being high quality? And there are many things that can contribute to this, but I find that these are the three main contributing factors. So, how does high quality hobby time stop being high quality? One, we enter the space in a highly emotional state, meaning we're having a lot of strong feelings like anger, frustration, and and when we do start to enter our hobby space in that strong feeling state, we start to pair those feelings with our hobby. And that can be a negative association that we make with our hobby. And that's not good. Next, a lot of times I see builders, even though we have the dedicated time to building, it is interrupt despite all of our planning, meaning even though we try to take care of a lot of things before times, there are still things that happen in life, such as if you're a parent, maybe you have a kid interrupts your hobby time, says they need something, or your spouse is like, I'm really sorry, but I need your help with this or that, or God forbid, you're on call for work and work interrupts your hobby time. So, life happens and that interrupts our hobby time. The third issue is that our build starts to trigger an emotional reaction, meaning even though we are set in our time to enjoy our hobby, something happens that triggers an emotional response and we need to address it at that point. And so ultimately these aren't quite the problems. It's that when these problems are left unaddressed that we can start to see issues, meaning instead of taking some time to transition into the hobby time, we brute force it and we try to make the hobby make us feel better. And while that can work sometimes, it's not one consistent, and two, if something does happen, are we able to then address those stronger feelings on top of the already strong feelings that we have? Next, if we have an interruption, instead of addressing that interruption, we start to internalize that frustration of our hobby time got interrupted. And so, again, instead of addressing it, we just let it linger inside of us and we hold on to it. And finally, maybe as we're building, instead of addressing the problem that came up with a build, like we broke something, we hold on to it or we avoid it, meaning we hold on to this negative feeling of, oh, I messed up. And instead of taking the time to learn or walk through it, we just kind of either push it to a side and avoid it and kind of leave it as a dark cloud over our hobby space, or we just kind of, again, hold on to it in our hearts and we hold on to it in our feelings and not quite address it properly. And so when our high quality hobby time is affected and we don't address it, that's when we become tempted with the idea of trying to get it back, meaning our high quality hobby time wasn't as enjoyable, but I want to get some of that back. And one of the big things that a lot of people start to do is they start to engage in revenge hobbying. And so this is that mental justification of well, my hobby time was interrupted, so I am owed this much time back. And a lot of times, this is going to look like revenge hobby procrastination, meaning there are chores that we need to get done, such as doing the dishes or taking out the trash or doing our laundry. And instead of doing the things that we know we should be doing, we're choosing to build our model kits or paint or whatever that may be instead. And so by doing the things that that we want to do instead of what we should be doing, that's when we can start to associate those feelings of guilt and shame with our hobby, because we know what we should be doing and we know that we're not doing it. And that's going to cause a little bit of, you know, unpleasantness when it comes to actually enjoying our hobby, because we're not enjoying it. We're doing it in spite of knowing what we should be doing instead. And so sometimes when we do that, it temporarily makes us feel good because it's like, oh, I got a quick build session in. But it's not a sustainable model long term, because one, we don't know how much time we're always going to get. And two, a lot of the times it's not a choice to do it. It's just sort of like it is, we are filling it. And that's when we start to use our hobby time as a filler, meaning I don't know what I want to do or what I should be doing, or I know what I want to and I don't want to do it. So I'm just going to go build instead. When we have these unplanned build times, what we eventually have is we have unclear start and stop times. When that happens is I don't know how much time I have. So what am I going to do? Well, instead of doing the thing that I actually want to do, I'm going to do something that I know I can start or stop at any point, meaning we're forcing ourselves to engage at a lower level than we actually want to. At this point, hobbying stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling more like a resignation. I I want to do it, and I'm going to get any amount that I can. And now instead of protecting a time that we have set aside, we're now just trying to get whatever we can. And we're only getting low quality bits here and there. And at this point, this is now when we start beginning in low quality hobby time. This means we don't allow ourselves for adequate time for proper enjoyment. And since there are no established expectations, we have to be ready to stop at any moment. And when we're ready to stop at any moment, we know in the back of our minds we can't achieve that flow state. We can't achieve that ultimate state of enjoyment. We can't stay completely in the present moment because our brains are constantly processing what else is going on in our lives. This lingering emotional reactivity decreases our overall enjoyment, and this decreased enjoyment when building becomes associated when we do eventually get back to our high quality hobby time, because now when we think about our high quality hobby time, we still remember the times when we were engaging in the low quality time. We remember the feelings that we had with our low quality time. And again, because we're not addressing these thoughts and these feelings, it trickles its way into our high quality hobby time. And when left unaddressed, can lead to burnout. So then the question now becomes, how do we eliminate that low quality hobby time and prevent it from reoccurring? The number one way that I can recommend getting rid of your low quality hobby time and getting back to good high quality hobby time is letting go of the things that have affected our high quality hobby time. Things happen. That's a fact of life. And it is your choice to either hold on to that negative feeling, hold on to that frustration, that anger that has interrupted the hobby time in the first place. Or second, you can choose to let it go, accept that challenges and just, things happen as a fact of life. And if you choose to let go of it sooner, you can get back to enjoying the hobby that much sooner. So instead of holding on to a lot of those strong feelings, I want you to let go. Take the time to just take a deep breath. That sucked. I hated it, but I'm back to where I want to be right now. And regain that composure and take yourself back into transition back into the hobby space. Second thing is, if you do have some times where you feel like you want to, I want you to be conscientious about avoiding using your hobby time as a filler or using it in order to avoid non-preferred tasks. Meaning, even though you know you could be doing this hobby and you know you should be doing something else, I want you to do the thing that you're supposed to be doing. And the reason being is that if you are able to clear the things that suck ahead of time, it makes the hobby time all that much more rewarding. Why? Because now we know, hey, I did the thing that I really didn't want to do. Now I can really enjoy my hobby time. I knew I could have taken the time to build, but instead I chose to do the laundry, or I chose to do the dishes, or I chose to mow the lawn. Do the things that you need to get done first. So when you sit down those things aren't hanging over your head. You know those things are done and taken care of, and you can focus back in on the hobby space in front of you. Lastly, if you do have something that arises during your build time, say a negative experience or something breaks or you have some frustrations, I want you to be mindful about your thoughts and your feelings in the hobby space. Meaning, if something does come up, address it right away. If you're getting frustrated, address it right away if you can. If you can't address it right away, take a break, take some time, and maybe go talk to a friend about it. Allow yourself the ability to transition in and out of your hobby space effectively. Meaning, when you step into your hobby space or when you sit down at your desk, you prepare yourself saying, this is now my hobby time. You take your deep breath and you relax. And when you're finished, you could say, that was a great hobby session. Let's get back to what I need to do. If you start to feel frustrations in the build time and you know that that's going to affect your next build time, take some time to talk about it. Find fellow builders to talk about the frustrations, and you can either learn how they overcame it, they can understand and empathize with you, and you can not commiserate, but again, you can share that emotional connection of knowing that negative feeling and understanding that someone else had this feeling. You can now relate to them and know that, hey, I'm not the only person experiencing this. And you can also know that, hey, that's a natural part of the hobbying. It's just a natural part of hobbying. And so when we do all of these things, the last thing I also want you to do is I want you to celebrate all of the wins that you get with your high quality hobby time. And so as we start to clear out the negative feelings, as we start to eliminate them by taking the transition period, by avoiding using the low quality hobby time, by letting go of the things that affect our high quality hobby time, I want you to celebrate the wins to reassociate the positive feelings. Hey, I enjoyed that. Hey, that thing was fun. Look, this thing looks cool. Find any little win that you can celebrate and celebrate it. Hey, I got this piece done. I'm so happy with it. Hey, I can't wait to get to do this next step. Hey, I want to try this new idea and I'm having so much fun. Reassociate those positive feelings in order to enjoy the hobby again. Reassociate those positive feelings so that your high quality hobby time is reassociated with happiness again. And when we do all of these things, we can start to take back, we can start to, again, break away from the negativity and start to rebuild the positivity. Our hobby is a much more integrated experience, and a lot of times that we realize if we can protect our hobby time a lot more and we can balance the acceptance that sometimes life happens, we can make the hobbying experience that much stronger in our minds. If we find ourselves engaging in low quality hobby times, ask yourself why and make the changes to get back to the high quality hobby time, but ultimately reassociate and strengthen the connections of high quality hobby time and happiness, high quality hobby time and positivity. Your hobby is something that you enjoy. And even if there are things that are negative that may pop up, take some time to talk about these feelings, address them with a friend, but also celebrate the positivity with a friend. Just as excited as you are about doing something cool, I'm sure they're excited to hear about it too. And if you don't have anybody to share your positive moments with, you can always share it with social media, and you can find like-minded people that enjoy the things that you do, that like the things that you like. Build a community around yourself to, again, reassociate that positivity with this hobby. And lastly, be thankful for all the things that this hobby has given you. It's giving you an opportunity to break away from the things that are happening in life. It gives you an opportunity to create and find control, and sometimes in a life that may be completely out of control. And it gives us an opportunity to express ourselves in ways we may not have ever thought of before. Enjoy the hobby, love it, and give back to the community if you can. With that said, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some value in this video. And remember, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, do what you love, and I'll see you in the next one.